Hello, everybody. I'd just like to say I am so pleased to have my Highbury squad sister on, Sophia Nicolaou. Sophie Nicolaou. She lives in Los Angeles, Gooner in Los Angeles. You can see her Arsenal Tube Station sign behind her. How are you, darling?
I am so good. And you know what, Super Kev, I don't know if you remember this, but back in 2011, you were in LA, you were in La La Land, and you came into the World Football Daily studios. And that was the very first time I ever met you and I interviewed you. And I just remember how super impressed everybody was with your demeanor, your attitude, your friendliness. You were a superb interview. And as a gooner at the time, I was like, holy, I just interviewed Kevin Campbell.
I
And fast
remember
forward
that. I
now, we're doing a
remember that.
show.
I
Do you
know. I
remember?
remember. I do remember. I couldn't forget that. It was great. It really was great. But Sophie, look. You've been out in LA for how long now?
I moved here 2 months before 9/11.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Amazing.
Long time,
So you've been
very
there a
long
lot. You've been
time.
there a long time. You've worked there for well all that time, really, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. Yep,
Do you
yep.
want to give us a little a background of what you do?
Yeah, of course. So I was living and born in London of Greek family and worked in London. And I was working in the entertainment industry for 20th Century Fox. And I got a little bit burnt out after a good few years working there and thought to myself, you know what, I just want to go chill. I want to go to LA. I've met a lot of people in my entertainment industry days there. And I came out here to just chill. And then Fox found out that I was here and they called me and they said, hey, why didn't you tell us you were coming to LA? And I said, well, I was trying to escape you. And then they said, well, we're looking for a PR exec for our international projects. And why don't you just come in and visit with us? So I went in and, you
That old
know,
chestnut. Yeah,
oh
yeah,
man,
hook you.
yeah, Casey, too. Like Arsenal is your in your heart, your soul. You know that first gig, that first professional contract, that
Oof.
first company you work for, but it stays inside you. I met so many mentors there, and it was such a wonderful experience. And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm living in LA. What better way to kick off my life here than to work for 20th Century Fox?
Brilliant. Well,
Yeah,
look, listen, we could speak about Los
I know.
Angeles for hours, but I want to get straight into it because I know this is going to be a lot of fun. Sophie, can you remember your first game at Highbury?
I can. And it's really interesting because I was so desperate to go to a football game. I fell in love with football from a young age, and it was because of my dad and mostly Casey, our generation. I think a lot of the falling in love came from the World Cups as
Hmm.
well.
Yeah.
My first vivid memory was 78, Johan Cruyff and that Dutch team. And so for me, I fell in love with a lot of the international style of football. So then when it came to watching games with my dad when I was old enough, I really enjoyed, watching flair players. And so when I finally got to go to Highbury, I grew up a Greek girl in a generation where parents were a little bit strict. My parents wouldn't let me go. And I was like, they wouldn't let me go see Star Wars. They wouldn't let me go to the Arsenal. They wouldn't let me go
Really?
anywhere.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
yeah, yeah. It was terrible. They regret it now. But so it was Manchester City. It was a Manchester City game, and I think it was in 86 or 7. It was 4-0.
Right.
I just remember, weirdly enough, Lee Dixon was actually pretty good at crossing the ball. I remember the first goal was Lee Dixon to Perry Groves, and he headed it in.
Right.
And all I remember from that game, Casey, was how Rocky tortured Manchester City. I mean, he played with them like a Brazilian. It was like he was Zico that day.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Michael Thomas scored a very similar goal
What
to the
to
goal he scored at
Anfield?
Liverpool.
Yes.
Did he
Yes.
make a habit of
I'm
that, or
so
is it just
pleased you
me?
mentioned that. No,
It's like
yeah, I remember. Yes, yes, I
it
remember that.
ricocheted off him as well. It was
Yeah.
insane. Yeah. So, and that was the season that he went on. Was it 88 maybe? I don't know. But anyway, that was my first recollection of being
Of
able to go and being allowed to go to a game.
of Arsenal. Right. So, who was your favourite player at that stage, Sophie?
At that stage, so for me, I was growing up and I was getting into this creativity. I loved writing stories, writing. I felt like I had stories to tell, like all this stuff inside me. So then when I was watching football, the players that spoke to me the most were the expressive players, the players that had a, you know, Casey, that little touch you
A
had
little bit of
in
flair.
that North London derby
A
with
little
the,
bit of flair.
oh, come on.
A little bit of flair. Yeah, a little bit of flair.
Exactly. So I loved obviously watching Rocky play. But you know what? Alan Smith had a touch that I think people do not, I'm not saying they don't respect Smudger, but he had this touch, a European esque toe. Some of his passes in small movements were really undeniable. And I think like a lot of the time there was something about him that connected the Picasso, if you know what I mean. There was,
Without a doubt. Without a
yeah.
doubt. Do you know, I think, Sophie, you know, the kind of the way Firmino is at Liverpool, where
Mm.
he's like the glue. You know, you only really, sometimes you don't even realize what he's doing.
Exactly.
When you take him out the team, then you realize it's not knitting together. It doesn't look the same. Alan Smith, I couldn't believe it when he came to the club, and I realized his quality. His quality was brilliant, and
Yeah, an
he is
unsung
so
hero.
underrated.
Yeah, a little bit like Ray Parlour, because Ray Parlour was among all these superstars, right? He was among wizards. But
Yes,
yeah, even real Romford Pele had his own wizardry as well. And I think like sometimes Smudger and Parlour get lost in the shuffle of some of these other
yes,
incredible players. But going back, I loved Brady. I loved watching. Honestly, I loved Alexis Sanchez when he came to the club. I loved watching him and Pires and Overmars. But the ultimate player was for me Dennis Bergkamp. What a
yeah.
magician!
Oh,
Just
yeah.
special.
He was an artist, wasn't he? He was
Yeah,
an artist.
yeah,
So,
true artist.
so tell me, Sophie, this might get a smile out of you. Tell me what your family football ties are, because I'm sure, being from North London, there might be some cross going on. Tell me.
So because also being Greek, right? There's a lot of passion
Oh
that's
yes,
involved in football. So growing up, you're going to be really proud of me that I came out of this insane kind of football upbringing. My dad was a Manchester United supporter,
right.
and obviously he fell in love with Busby, the Busby Babes, in his era, and then of course Georgie Best came along.
Understandable, yeah. Understandable.
Understandable, right?
Yeah,
Just like everyone who fell in love with the Liverpool team, and even when I was younger, I loved watching Liverpool play.
yeah.
Right? We all did. We appreciated the quality. My mum, I don't know if anyone knows this. My mum was a Stoke City fan.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. Well, to Arsenal,
Listen,
that's like that. But Stoke, my son's there, so I've got
I
to say,
know. So
yeah,
we're
that's
all right,
cool.
right? And she fell in love with Stoke because of Gordon Banks,
Right.
right? So, and then my sister became a Man United fan. I'm the youngest. My brother became a Tottenham fan.
Wow. Wow.
Unbelievable how that happened. And he was influenced by a cousin of ours.
Right.
And so when I was growing up, it was this kind of smorgasbord of watching United, Stoke, and Tottenham are playing. And then all of a sudden, my first cousins really gravitated to Arsenal. My cousin George, my eldest cousin George has got their season tickets.
Is
And
that
then
George who I met?
you met George,
Top
yes.
class, top guy, top guy. Well done, George.
George was the one that kind of put his arm around me and was like, no, 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 no. If you live in North London and you're a North London girl, you are not supporting a Northern team. And so that's really how I became a true Gooner.
A true good. Ah, that's lovely. So, okay, tell me about your story for '89, because
Oof.
you know there's a lot of people. Some people were gonna go to the game, some couldn't go to the game. It was on a Friday night. What happened with you, Soph?
So the Friday night was really, again, I wanted to go to the game. My cousins were going to the snooker club to watch the game.
Right.
And at the time, believe it or not, Casey, girls were not allowed in the snooker club.
Was that, which snooker club was it?
It was one in Wood Green.
Right. Okay.
Okay. And it wasn't too far from the Greek church. So the Greek boys were at the snooker club having a little bit of gambling, 200 yards away from the Greek church. Yeah. And my cousins were like, let's just come. And I was like, no, I can't. Right. So I ended up watching the game at home with my dad, the Man United fan, and my uncle Zach, God rest his soul, a Gooner, true Gooner.
Right.
And every Friday they'd be in we had dress factories back in the day.
Yeah.
So Friday was a big, they used to call it a cabbage day, where they'd sell a few extra dresses, they'd get a few extra pounds. So we had a bit of champagne.
Get some cabbage. Yeah, some more cabbage in. Yeah.
Get some more cabbage in. And so I watched the game with my dad and my uncle. And it was really just, now looking, at the time I was upset because I couldn't go out.
Yeah.
I couldn't go to the club and watch the game. But now when I look back and watching that game with my uncle and my dad, I feel so lucky and fortunate that I did that, because they're telling stories of back in the day and the double winning team, the 70s. My dad's going on about the Busby Babes and Georgie Best. And it was like being in this vortex of old school stories, Casey.
Quality,
you would have loved
quality.
it. Oh, it was quality, yeah. And then at the end of the game, the phone starts buzzing. Everyone's calling the house.
Don't jump, Sophie.
Okay,
I can't have you jumping. I can't have you jumping. Here's the question. So before the game, were you optimistic? And what was your dad and uncle saying? Because many people, even Lee Judges, admitted he didn't think we would get the result.
So one great thing about these old Greek geezers is they had a nose for the gambling, Casey. Yeah. And I know you've been around a few of them.
The odds, yes.
Right? The odds. Yeah. So they like the odds. They both bet on Arsenal to win 2-0. Amazing. And I think my uncle Zach was more of the ilk of, he's a fan, he wants them to win.
Yeah.
Whereas my dad was like, I wouldn't put it past George Graham to pull this off. Yeah. And he put it on George Graham because at the time it felt like, I don't want to compare the two, but there was a little bit of Mourinho in Graham, that arrogance. He knew he was special. He knew this was his time. Yeah. And my dad, in the dress industry, working for all these tough nuts, he had a lot of respect for George Graham, even though he was a Man United fan. So that's how that all came about. Crazy.
So Alan Smith scores the first goal.
Mm-hmm.
How do you react?
Well, I'm a jumper. I'm a screamer.
Right.
And we're talking about football.
Right.
So
hey, listen, this is for the adults. This is for the adults.
We're going back to an old Highbury squad show here.
Oh, jeez.
So I get super excited. My uncle Zach, he's off his feet. He's eating these chickpeas.
Yeah.
They go up in the air. My dad's just like sitting there.
Cool.
Doesn't care at this point. Phone rings. Cousin George calls me from a payphone. 1-0, right? That's how that first goal went. And then it was more of, okay, don't do this. Don't make us believe that we can actually do it. That's where it went after that.
And then when Michael Thomas had the first opportunity, do you remember? He had an opportunity.
Yes.
And it kind of, it didn't take it. It was like, whoa, the weight of the world was on the Arsenal fans' shoulders. It was like, oh, that was our chance.
That was the moment. And you felt like it had gone. We've been through a lot of that since, but that moment felt like, because it was Liverpool, this was the mighty Liverpool. Yeah. Even when I was younger, I loved watching this Liverpool. I'm not afraid to admit it. Yeah. I mean, I loved watching Dalglish. They were so great to watch. And in Europe, you couldn't help but root for them because, you wanted to root for an English team. I might have a little bit of a different attitude about that now. Now I'm older.
Yeah.
But at the time, they felt like this invincible army.
Yeah, they were a super team. They were they were the team, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
So John Lukic rolls it out to Lee Dixon. And we know the narrative, Dixon to Smith through to Thomas, bursting through the midfield. It's up for grabs now and the ball hits the back of the net.
So
Go on, Sophie, tell me.
Okay, so what's really weird about this whole scenario is At the time, I had this dream of working in the film industry on movies, telling stories. And I loved sports as well, but my primary passion was film.
Yeah.
And so as the story was building, I noticed like my uncle and my dad were focused on the players and how things were moving.
Yeah.
But I was focused on Brian Moore.
Right. You're right. Okay. The commentator. Yeah.
The commentary, the way he built that up, Casey, it's as much of the moment as the moment itself.
Very true.
And obviously he gave us one of the greatest lines of all time in commentary history. But I started watching it like this movie unfolding. That was where my youthful imagination took me. And so when that happened, I was more focused on his voice. And then all of a sudden, when the ricochet happened, it jolted me out of that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because even then you thought, oh my God, well, he screwed it up again. Sorry,
No,
Mickey.
no, but I get what you're saying. No, you're right, because the ricochet, it's either it could go the wrong way or it could go the right way, and then all of us, that's when it slowed down, didn't it?
Yep.
It was like, that Jaws moment where he sees Jaws and he starts going towards it. That was like, wow.
It's true. And then it just happened, and all I remember is my mum had bought these new leather sofas and she was so stoked with them, and the goal went in and my uncle just jumped up and his whiskey just went flying, and it went all over my mum's new leather sofas. He had these chickpeas, they went flying. My dad was sitting there and all he was like, I told you, George Graham, 2-0. I put the bet.
He won. That was brilliant.
Great times, really good times.
What a fantastic. And how was it after? Because obviously because it was on ITV, wasn't it? It was on ITV, and the TV it got the trophy, I think, and then it shut off.
Yeah, but then everyone descended to Southgate.
Yeah.
And they were just waiting for the team to show up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And so for us, it was at the time when I was earlier, it went from the Pink Elephant to, what was the place in
Winners
Southgate?
Club. Winners
Club. Thank you.
Yeah.
And my cousins always used to party at the Winners Club. So I was just waiting for someone to come pick me up just so we could go out there. And I kept waiting, Casey. And the truth of the matter is my cousins did not show up because they were so...
They were drunk. They were out of it. They were off it. They were on it. Oh, bless them.
They were on it, and they hung out. They saw all of you that night. I mean, they were there, and they did the whole gamut. And I did a drive-by eventually with one of my female cousins.
Yeah.
And it was different. The truth is, at the time, football was a little bit different. There were a lot of women that used to go to games, but it was a little bit different as we were easing ourselves into the sport then. But what a night in Southgate, North London, where we grew up, to have that moment, and for Arsenal to beat Liverpool. It was really a David versus Goliath night.
It was.
And,
It was.
Yeah,
it was
amazing.
Got across the line. And do you know what, Sophie, I've got to tell you this. 89, Lee Dixon and Amy Lawrence and all the team done a fantastic job with 89. It's actually being shown for the first time on Sky.
That. I read that.
Sky, yeah. So, great. I've got to give them a big props. Now, Sophie, we're going to move on.
All right.
Please, can you tell me how you compare the Highbury days, to the Emirates experience? Because you were over not too long ago, weren't you?
It's a great question, Casey, because I think for our Generation Xers and the baby boomers, Highbury was church.
Yeah.
It was the place where we went and found ourselves, where we went and found new friends, where we grew up, right? And it's really funny because I think sometimes as players, I think you know it, but to hear it is, you've given us some of the greatest memories of our lives. And we can actually track back our memories to football moments. I could say, like, I used to do that when I worked in the film industry. Oh yeah, that's when Snatch, Minority Report came out. I was doing that summer. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. You could reference it to something.
Yes. Yeah. And so for me, Highbury was, when I first went there, I thought it was like Disneyland. you know, because you see the pitch, you see everything, and it's like so much larger than life than watching it on TV. And you and I think we have a mutual friend, or I knew someone that worked at the club at the time, who was an assistant in I think it was for George Graham and then Wenger though. And so I actually got the opportunity to walk the marble halls. I got the chance to stand behind you guys in the tunnel when you ran out for a game against Liverpool. At the end of the game, stood on the pitch, took a cheeky corner from the clock end that day after the Liverpool match. And it was like being a kid in a candy store, and the atmosphere, the closeness, the intimacy. But I also think because we were so successful there, the memories, and in life, memories are everything.
Yeah.
We hold on to them. We talk about them, the nostalgia. And so I think the memories at Highbury the memories at the Emirates don't even compare to the memories at Highbury.
Yeah.
Like being there the day Wrighty broke Bastin's record. I mean, that's magic.
Yeah,
you know?
that's magic. And the way he done it as well, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and the way he did it too. So for me, I mean, those European nights at Highbury. I mean,
Highbury under the lights. Amazing.
Under the lights. You can't compare it. And I enjoy going. Look, I've been to the Emirates in the stadium, and I've been in the executive box and stuff like that. It's just a different era. It's a different time. It's a different breed of fan. And I just don't. That's why I want Goodison Park to live forever. That's why I wanted Upton Park to live forever. Mm-hmm. That's why, still, given the opportunity, I'd go to a game at Craven Cottage.
Yeah.
Just that
authenticity. This is the authentic part of it. Feel of an old school ground, isn't it? It means a lot. But you know, listen, the Emirates is an impressive stadium. We know that. Mm-hmm. But there's just that feel, isn't there? There's a feel. There's people who go to the Emirates who have never experienced Highbury.
I think if we'd won a title there, it would be a totally different story. I think if we'd have won the title the year Leicester won it, we had a couple chances those 2 seasons, and I think that was the last big chance that we've had in terms of now how everything has evolved and escalated. But I think if we'd won a championship there, Casey, maybe we'd look at the Emirates with a little bit more positivity. Our generation, anyway.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Sophie. I think you're right. So, okay, Sophie, what is it like being a female Gooner in LA?
Oh, you
know,
and
and in the US in general, because you've got friends everywhere.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I really do love it. And I think there's some really good organizations out here that have helped connect the dots, Casey.
Yeah.
You've got the Arsenal USA group, you've got Arsenal America, you've got our Power of the Show, Tiffany, who does Gooner every year now. So when I first moved here in 2001, I'd be lucky to get 1 game on Fox Soccer. And I remember even way back when it was, you know, a couple of people just presenting, you know, and then I truly feel the reason why MLS has grown here is because the audience, the TV investment in the Premier League, Bundesliga, La Liga over here grew as well.
Yeah.
And so being a Gooner here is fantastic because there's a real sense of community. I think the last tour was one of the very best I've ever seen. You know, I've gotten to interview Arsene Wenger. I've got to meet some of the players. Mm-hmm. I've got to do things that maybe I wouldn't have been able to do living in the UK. And so it's really great, and I love that they come out here as often as they do. And you shared something from way back when, like with the Arsenal tours, and you know, it was Independiente, right?
Independiente, Miami, yeah,
in Miami. So the US has become a really great, I think, market for Arsenal, and you can see when you come here. You know, there's Real Madrid, there's Barcelona, Man United, and then there's Arsenal. I mean, seriously, I think we've made huge strides here as a club, and so I love it. And to be able to talk football and have that opportunity from way back then, I was actually one of the first female voices to talk about football live on a daily soccer show here. So I got some opportunities here that maybe I wouldn't have
in England,
growing up in London.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So in your opinion, Sophie, could Arsenal make the experience for overseas Gooners better? Do you think the club could do more?
I actually think over the last 2 or 3 years, they've built some really great affiliations with the Arsenal America groups. I mean, we saw like Hector Bellerin hanging out in the pub in Burbank, where Arsenal fans gather at 4:30 a.m. in the morning, come rain or shine, whether it's warm, cold, or whatever. Long Beach, Burbank, these groups around California, where I live too, up in San Francisco. I think they've done a really good job of bridging that gap. And I think social media has helped with that. This is the
Yeah,
positive aspect of social media. But I also credit the groups here that have continued to try and create events, moments, experiences as well. So I think everyone's doing a great job, and Arsenal have definitely connected more over the last couple of tours than they have done in the past.
in the
And
past.
and maybe that's a little bit of Wenger not being in there anymore, and there being a bit more freedom for Nunes.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Look, I mean, this might be, it's not, I don't want this to be controversial, but I want you to speak from the heart.
Sure.
What do you think of Stan Kroenke, his son Josh, and their ownership of Arsenal? You're in America, so you know more about Stan Kroenke than most. Let's be honest, you would know more.
Well, Stan Kroenke's always been criticised, even here, for ownership of some of his US teams, in particular the Colorado Rapids in MLS. He's not the type of owner, billionaire owner, who puts his hands in his own pockets and helps buy players or change things. And obviously, the model in the US is a little bit different because you've got salary caps, you've got
Yeah.
different rules and regulations. The Rams is a huge project here in Los Angeles, and this is definitely a very difficult time for them in terms of how close they were to finishing the stadium, the
Yeah.
investment they've put into that, what that means to the community. Obviously, for him, as a business guy, he's bought all the land around it. He knew what he was doing when he was buying it, and it just so happens he's putting an NFL team there. But
Hmm.
it's going to be a venue, a little bit like Spurs' new stadium, for concerts and other events, etc.
Hmm.
Now, with all of that comes a lot of obligation from a monetary perspective. And that obligation is going into these investments here and not so much into Arsenal, because they feel Arsenal generates itself, makes enough money.
Yeah.
They don't have to put their hands into their own pockets like other owners to source and buy players, etc. I think during COVID, the club gained a few fans back in terms of respect and not trust, but how we handled
Hmm.
things.
Class, the classy way.
Yes. Now, was
Yeah.
that the Cronkies or was that the executive team? I think in it with any job, you've got to get approval from the person who writes the checks,
Yeah.
because to be able to pay people the way we have during this time, Casey, and the fact that the club have done that, that has to come from the guy who signs the check. So I do think that they've gained a little bit more momentum back in this time. But the proof will be in the pudding when it comes to competing again, transfer market. But I think under Arteta, we're seeing this. He's laying the foundation for, we're not going to go out and sign those $50 million players. I'm going to build a team.
Hmm.
And I think there's this sense of they've bought into him, and
Yeah.
they're not, I think he knows he's not going to get the war chest, because it might not just be possible at this point. It wasn't possible before, and it's certainly not going to be possible now. And so because of that, I think Arteta's actually done some good PR for them. And he's
Yeah.
making them look good just through the fact that he's a great communicator. So am I kind of saying, hey, well done, Cronkies, you've done an amazing job during this time? I respect what you've done during this time.
Hmm.
As owners, have they done the right thing over the last few years? No, not in order for Arsenal to be competitive.
Mm. For me, what I've got to say about that, Sophie, is Stan Kroenke could put his hand in his pocket, and if ever there was an opportunity to do it, it's now.
Mm-hmm.
To back a young manager who has made some improvements on this squad. Let's be honest, he's made some improvements, but we need to get to the next stage. We need to get to be a winning team. Now, if we don't have the budget,
Mm-hmm.
the owner might have to stick his hand in his pocket. I don't know whether he's prepared to do that or not, obviously, with what he's got going on in America. But I think if ever there was a time, that time is now.
I think it was a really big wake-up call for them on this last tour in the summer, seeing the enormity of Arsenal in the United States. they hadn't seen that before. They may have traveled to training sessions and gone to games and seen the team play, but to see them in that moment on that tour, especially there was almost double, triple the media that came to follow the team as well.
Yeah.
And I think that clicked. There was something that clicked in that moment where they saw the value of Arsenal in a different way. So I hope that they support Arteta, and I think we're all hoping that. I think Arteta is also a bit of more of a master of negotiation than Emery was.
Yeah.
I think he can sway people in a room. He's a bit of a salesman as well as someone who just comes from an authentic place. So I just think now after COVID, monetarily, it was tough for us before.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think fans are going to really get too angry knowing that we've got some financial challenges, as does every club in the world right now.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do it the hard way. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that right now,
No.
Sophie.
And
Even
when
if
you've got a Martinelli and a Saka, and you've got some really good youth, you've got
youngsters,
Smith Rowe,
yeah,
you've got some great youngsters. Arteta has seen the model at Manchester City. He knows what he wants to do. There's no doubt about it.
mm-hmm.
He is not in two minds about the team he wants to build.
Yeah.
And so knowing that, and knowing he's not about, the I, he's about the we, I feel like that's the reason why I have a bit more faith. If there was somebody else in charge, I'm not sure I'd have that same faith right now.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, then it's the last question. We're already at your last question.
No way.
We are already. Can
Amazing.
you believe that? If there was 3 things you could change about Arsenal to make it better, make the club better, what would they be, Sophie?
Well, that's a good one. Look, obviously we all want to buy great players. I just want to build a team. I would love to see Arsenal build a team again.
Okay. So
Remember
what does that feel like? Is it so build a team? Is it the recruitment?
Yes, very important.
So would you change the recruitment, or would you upgrade the improvement? Recruitment.
Who found Martinelli after other
Edu.
teams whiffed on him?
Edu, wasn't it? Yeah, Edu.
So I think like putting a bit more faith in someone like him and sourcing talent like that. And then obviously you have the talent that come through the academy and continuing to nurture the academy. And I'm not saying like build a, Sir Alex Ferguson type of, but why not? Why can't we build a team like that around these players with some senior players to help anchor that pressure when it comes to big games, having the pedigree, being in those situations and stuff like that. So for me, it's about, I want us to feel like a team again, and it be about the team and not individuals, not Ozil's salary, not Sanchez throwing his toys out the pram, not worrying about
social media.
Yes, all of these things. Build a team, and that's why I think Arteta can do that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is coming up with an idea of how to help, fans with season ticket prices and things like that. I think we're a little bit too expensive. I think we make a lot of money. At the same time, I know we have, our financial challenges, as I've said, but trying to make it affordable. And I heard you and Amanda talking about the safe standing stuff.
Yeah.
And that might be a way of doing that. And LA Galaxy here we're going to be introducing that this season. So that too. That would be the second, making it affordable for people, especially in this time. And I think with that team thing, I just want to be competitive in the league again. I miss those moments, those games, Casey, and you
the
played
roller
in many.
coaster, being on the roller coaster.
Yes. Yeah. The last time we had that was when we kind of caught that Leicester game, that Welbeck header. Yeah. I was ready to bet my mortgage.
That Arsenal, they were pushing on.
I was ready. And that was the moment I think, man, if only, and maybe if we had done, maybe it would have been, some people would have said, oh, the league was weak that year, or the top teams failed, or you can still win and you win and you beat what's in front of you. Right. So for me, I just want to have those games. where we play Man United or we play Man City, but the league is at stake.
Yes. High
That's
stakes
what I
football.
miss. High stakes football.
High stakes football. Yep. Let's have it.
Boom.
So that's the free thing. Listen, Sophie, I love that. I honestly love that. We miss it, don't we? As Arsenal
Yeah.
fans, we've had years of it. We really do miss it. I know we
Yeah.
do.
It's like once you stay at the Four Seasons, you don't really want to stay at the 2-star hotel. You know what I'm
No.
saying? You
No,
you
you
want to
got
keep
the
the
motive.
champagne life rolling, and they
Yeah.
got us used to the champagne life. Champagne football, and
That's right.
yeah.
That's right.
So
Now,
yeah.
Sophie, listen, I got to thank you for your time, my love. Really appreciate your time. This is part one, so we're going to have to do this again.
Okay.
There's going to be
Okay, good. Because I've got some good Beckham and Kaká and
and
Pirlo
Zlatan
stories
and
from
all
here,
this.
and
So
Zlatan.
listen,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
could,
yeah,
we
yeah.
can, we're gonna flesh it out a little bit, yeah. So
Yeah, I love it.
thanks so much, darling, and take care and be safe. And I'll speak to you soon.